Hello and welcome. My name is Carsten Lützen. I'm a Scrum Master and Agile Coach. Today I'll share one of my favorite questions, the scaling question from the solution-focused coaching toolbox. The source of this is Jesper, one of my very dear friends from Solution Surfers. And if you like these videos, please subscribe and share. That would be awesome. In the solution-focused coaching toolbox, we always try to amplify what works and focus on this. And I've used scaling questions for some time, but only recently I've learned even how great the power of this type of question is. Jesper shared with me some of his ways of facilitating both individual but also group sessions with one single question, and that was a real eye-opener for me. And the idea is quite simple. If we start with the basic scaling question, I've covered some of this in the OSCAR model video earlier, but I will just recap it. First, imagine that we are in a coaching session. This can be a retrospective, a one-to-one, or whatever. In this session, we're looking at a specific problem, and we want to find a good way to alleviate this. To the coachee or the person next in front of you, ask some around the following. So let's say we have a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being this, and then you start to set up this, I won't say utopia, but perfect way of how would the perfect world look like. People talking and were best buddies, or the product progress was amazing, or whatever 10 is. Before I talked with Jesper, I would also define what a 1 would be. But I found out after also talking with Jesper and experimented with it, I don't need to create that 1. We don't need to go down into what does the worst case scenario look like. It's fine enough just defining what 10 is. So when we have defined the 10, I usually do that as a coach, asking for input from the coachee, using the coachee's own words to make this picture perfect version. Then what we're going to do is we're going later to look at the increments. It can either be 0.1 baby steps or a larger increment, a 1 plus. But first, ask the coachee to scale. So where do you see yourself? Then the coachee might answer, I see myself as a 5. Okay, a 5, interesting. So what made it a 5 and not a 4? And in this way, we give the coachee some time to reflect on, maybe it's actually not that bad. We actually have some stuff that works. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said a 5. I would have said a 1. And then when we have these things that already works in the head, right, in this head of the coachee, then we can start to look at, okay, so with this that works, how would you then recognize? How could you see that something has changed? How can you see something was better? How can you see that it's a 5.1? I'm not asking what you're doing to make it a 5.1, but how can you recognize that it's a 5.1? Then start to go down in what changes is it that we really want to see. And when we have these changes, then we can start to actually look into, okay, so how can we make sure that these changes happen? And then we only focus on these changes, not everything else, only on these things. And then we get a really good set of things that the coachee can go do afterwards. And then again, back to the question I had and this talk I had with Jesper around this. Jesper shared some super awesome ways to tweak this a bit. If we have a room, for instance, have 1 in one end of the room, 10 in the other end of the room, and then have people to distribute. And then when you ask these questions, we can do them quite generic. Then maybe ask people not to say anything, just do it in silence, so you just ask questions. So imagine this thing that you would like to find a solution for. 10 being everything is solved, everything is awesome, it's super, super perfect. Where would you rate yourself between 1 and 10? Then have people to stand in the room where they think they belong, not saying anything. And then ask them to reflect upon, so what is already working, and you can start to see how we are using the same questions, but just in silence for a bigger group of people. And then in the end of this exercise, they will actually have a list of 3 things that they can now go do without even saying a word, without sharing what their frustration or problem was, because that can be difficult for some, especially if we're in a group and trying maybe to teach the scaling question. Another thing you can also do, and I've used that for instance in a retrospective or an input session to product owner, is to use this scaling question. So online from a 1 to 10, 10 being that the product is on track and we have extra capacity and the quality will be interstellar, everything is perfect. Then have people in the chat, not send it yet, but in the chat write a number, where do they rate themselves, and then in the chat, not sending it, write what is already working. And then at the end, when all these questions have been answered and everybody has written everything down, then have it being sent, then have the product owner to read through the comments and the things that are already working, the signs of change and what actions we can do to get that change. Have the product owner to initially reflect upon this and then have the team to pitch in with ideas and things. That's also a great way to do retrospectives. And that just shows how versatile this scaling question is. You can take it in so many directions and it just keeps on giving excellent results. So I'm really hoping that some of you will share how you have tweaked this concept of scaling questions to benefit you, and hopefully I can learn from that. That would be awesome. And if you want to dive further into this, there's also multi-scaling and a lot of other things. So just search for scaling questions. It's awesome. And as always, comments, questions, ideas and feedback are more than welcome. Have a nice day.